Welcome. Hey, Moxie Anna, how are you? Welcome. I just realized that my iPad shows the thumbnail of the show. It's kind of busy, and I'm gonna have a hard time reading chat on there. But I do have another phone that I read the chat on. How's everyone today? Spooktacular, Junk Collector Pro, by a nose. Vicky, 1962. Nancy Smith is here. West Coast is here. Thanks for being here, everyone. Welcome on this Tuesday. Hopefully, everyone had a nice long weekend for Memorial Day. Got in some good family time, good barbecue. What did everyone do for Memorial Day? And of course, had some reflection time. Nice long weekend. Good. Awesome. We did a show yesterday because it's our normal schedule, but we also, didn't have to do a lot of other things. And my daughter was off work, and my son and my daughter-in-law were off work, and we had a nice barbecue. And the weather was actually really nice. It's been cold here in Utah, unseasonably cold, but it finally is getting nice and warm, which is nice. But usually what happens is we go from winter weather to summer in like the course of a few days. So you spent it digging in my other storage, getting it organized. Ah, there you go. And a little bit of grilling. Well, there you go. You got the grilling in. Good morning. Hey, Akibono and Mondi's Deals. How's it going? All right, let's talk about today, whatever you guys are needing to talk about, but also make sure you read the show notes and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you ever want to rewatch or, if you missed a show and you want to rewatch it, or if you're curious about something that you missed, you can go there and go to my lives and rewatch these shows because they're being multicast on YouTube. And that way you can do that. And my YouTube channel is Draz on Whatnot. I'm also on TikTok, Draz on Whatnot. But my content there is just kind of whatever. Artsy fartsy Frida. Oh, you're a Utah dweller. Welcome in. So tell me what you sell. I need to make sure I'm following you. So how long have you been on? Because we had a meet and greet here in February. And I don't remember seeing your name. So very cool. So the Large J store. We sell new attack for, I'm looking at your profile. Laura J. So you sell new attack for the whole family, excellent quality pre-lived in clothing, as well as our star players upcycled jeans. I love the jeans on your picture there. Very cool. My daughter is very artistically talented, and she told me the other day she's got a pair of like wide legged jeans, and she's going to cut them off kind of at the knee. I guess that's kind of in style to have the longer shorts. I don't know. And she's going to paint either a dragon or these big flowers. She hasn't decided. So I'm excited to see how they turn out. You started in December. So you should have gotten an email inviting you to come to that local meet and greet. So you might have missed it. So I tell everybody, make sure you check your emails because we would have loved to have had you. So let's see. So you sew. So I sell fabric and craft items. So make sure you check out some of our shows because they have amazing fabrics that are all. We have a huge haul of home decor type fabrics that are saved, upcycled. Like we rescued them. So you get some really, really cool pieces that are smaller pieces that you can use for creative stuff. So we have a lot of people that make bags and other stuff. Hey, Bonnie Brickle, how are you today? Welcome in. Bella Bazaar, welcome. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with that, and I make bags and glasses cases and boxy baskets and some other things and sell a little bit of those, but I mostly sell the fabric and the craft items here local or here on Whatnot. Mondi says, Dana, so ever since I began last year here, I always use my own logo for shows and never bother with creating thumbnails like many here. And it just depends on what works for you, because if you have a good following and people recognize your logo and it matches up with what you sell, that's totally fine, you know. So I use Canva, and I use their AI feature to create all my thumbnails, and it's super easy, super fast. I do think to get the enhanced or the way that their AI works the best, you do have to get a subscription, but it's not very expensive to get a year's subscription to Canva. And you just go in and use the AI feature to create an image, and you literally just tell it an idea of what you want, and it creates it for you. So if you look at all the thumbnails I have on my profile right now, the only one that I didn't use, oh no, I even used Canva for that one, but that one wasn't AI generated. Um, Let me just look at my profile really quick and see. So yeah, see, like this was AI generated. Well, that's a video. It flipped to the video. This one was created on Canva, but I didn't use AI because it's just got my picture. And then, but all these were created using AI. Um, so all of those, and it just creates beautiful, colorful thumbnails. I think it's super easy, but you can also use Chat GPT. There's other ones you can use. Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to pay for Canva. There is a free version. And you do get limited access to that AI feature to create. It just doesn't give you like it's kind of a point system or something weird. Because once I started paying, I decided it was worth it to pay because I use a lot of different thumbnails. So, but before that, I still could use it. It just was limited. So yeah, it is super fun. I love playing with it to come up with thumbnails. So yeah, you just kind of tell it what you want. So this thumbnail on this show is a newer one that I created for the walk and talk. It was kind of interesting what it kept coming up with, because I was trying to tell it, show a woman walking on a treadmill, but only her legs, and show that, that she's live streaming. And anyway, it kind of gets so it does sometimes get a little bit complicated depending on what you're trying to do, but yeah. Yeah, really you just tell it what you want, but you do have to be specific, and AI can only, output what you're telling it, and it gets a little bit confused if you don't use, specific order and language so that it knows what you want. But yeah, I mean, it just does amazing stuff in a matter of seconds. And that would take someone like hours, using some kind of design software to create something. So it's pretty amazing. So I don't know if I don't know. I would avoid tutorials about Canva because that would get very in detail. Because you can do a lot with Canva, including drawing your own stuff, but that would get pretty complicated. So I'm all for telling telling AI what to do and then have it create it. So, all right. Yeah, it just, and it just depends. I use it enough that I felt like it was worth it to pay for the subscription. But there's lots of other ones out there that are, free or cheaper or whatever. I don't know. I got introduced to Canva and I've liked it, and I'm kind of lazy. I'm not going to go searching for something else if what I'm using works. So, but I might, search for something else if, if I decide it's cheaper to do something different. So, yeah. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. Read the show notes. We were talking about creating thumbnails using AI on either Canva or ChatGPT or some other program that will create images for you using AI. And I just think it makes a world of difference. I'll be honest with you, when you go to the For You page, the shows that you want to go to that are eye-catching, especially if it's someone you don't know, are the ones that have really nice thumbnails, because that's what brings people in, is that image. And then secondarily, a nice title that kind of tells you what it's all about. So it's important to have a nice thumbnail and a good title. So, because really, how else are you going to get people to come into your shows? Because it's all about, that eye-catching image and title that draws them in from the very beginning. So I think that's hugely important. Now, there are some sellers who, get to the point where their own logo or their own face is their brand. And because they built such a big following, that's perfectly fine, because that's very recognizable, and everyone's just like, oh, that's so and so. That's their show, that's recognizable. So if you have a logo or an image that you've been using and you've built a good following, you can continue to use that. I do think it's important, to kind of tell people what you're going to be selling somehow, so that if they're coming there to actually buy, which of course we want them to do, you need to kind of show them, when you're newer especially, what are you selling. So I tell people, be careful about what you use as your thumbnail image, because you need people to be able to kind of see what you got, what you have to offer. And if you just consistently have a picture of your dog or a picture of the pretty scenery at your house, or, those are nice, but that's not really showing, anything when you're new, what you're going to sell. Once someone becomes well established, they can do whatever they want usually, because, they've got a huge following and people will just come. But even then, I think it's important for them to have a recognizable logo or consistent thumbnail they use, so that people can immediately just be like, oh, that's so and so. So, yeah. Hey, Sarah, how are you today? Welcome in. So, day after Memorial Day, how's everyone doing? So, let's talk about the slow time on Whatnot and on any platform. I know this isn't about design, but I keep seeing sellers booking shows in same category at the same time or minutes apart, just clogging the category. Yeah, I'm not sure what that strategy is. It annoys me too. I think honestly, a lot of it is that they think that's gonna maybe get them, but all they're doing is dividing up their bookmarks. So I'm not quite sure I understand that. Has anyone told anyone that that's a good strategy, to have multiple shows booked on the same day at the same time? I almost think it's just a matter of they kept pushing shows, and for then they used to have a regular schedule, and they didn't even realize they had two of them or three of them on the same day, and then they go live that day and they're like, oh, whoops, and then they fix it. So I don't know. Yeah, I find it very annoying too, and I don't know. So if someone has said to you that that is a good strategy for trying to make sure you've got, a lot of exposure, I haven't heard that. So I just think it's confusing and annoying personally. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, Moxie. I'm with you. I'm kind of like, that's weird. That's weird. To me, it's kind of like, seems like like I said, like they're not really keeping track of when they scheduled shows, and then they pushed it out, and then all of a sudden they've got two or three on the same day. And I always check, and I've had that happen a couple times, and I'm like, oh crap, and then I fix it, but it's usually further out, so I doubt anyone noticed it, you know? So, it does happen. If you're a bigger seller and you do a lot of shows, I can see that happening, because, if you reschedule something and move it to a different day. But yeah. All right. So, yeah, I was going to transition into talking about the slow time. So, this is the slow time on all online platforms for selling. It just is. There's other times it's sometimes are a little bit slow. So you just have to strategize what you're going to do during the slower time. And I would say probably the best use of your time is to use the time during the slower season to get organized, to, try some different strategies that you've thought about doing before. Um, you can use it to, kind of clear out some older stuff by having longer shows that are more, I don't, that are more kind of like laid back, so to speak. So you're not as in such a big rush. You can, um, maybe go live more frequently, but for less time. Try that. Do different things, but it is important to continue as long as your, availability is the same, to continue to be on here regularly and have a presence. So, but you can do other things to, try different things, because you're typically not going to get as big of an audience regularly, especially if you're newer and starting out new during the slow time. So the slow time really is just end of May to about end of July, because everybody's off school, off work, vacationing, outside doing other things, all that good stuff. And that's important. And you may try different times, because you may capture people. People are addicted to whatnot, let's face it. So even if they're on vacation, you may still capture them, but it might be better to go on early morning or late night, when they are, you know, either pre-activity or post-activity, and they're just you're relaxing, and that's kind of their downtime to come on and do other things. So Yvonne, hey Yvonne, how are you? I've taken your advice and have had doll chat shows, or I rehab a doll on screen, getting it ready to list for sales, have been sales, so it is good. Awesome. Yeah, so there's lots of things you can do. You can have shows where you're just organizing stuff and having people give you, suggestions about how to organize or what they would like to see in the future or whatever. And, even if you just have a small audience, it allows you to interact more personally with the people that do come into your shows regularly. Give them a little bit of, um, excitement about being helpful to you, or interacting more personally with you, and so on. So there's lots of different things you can do to kind of utilize that time. The biggest one, I think, is organization, because it gives you, because it's a little bit slower, more time to get organized, get things, come up with strategies, come up with, better ways to do your shows, maybe get some shows all the way ready for when it does pick up, have it fully curated, already loaded, this is good to go for another time. So try and really maximize the opportunities that you have to do some things that will help you in the future to have better shows. So, all right. And I come on here and I give lots of advice, and most of it I follow, and then there'll be weeks where I'm like, I'm on here preaching all these things, and it's been such a crazy week. I just really haven't had time that I wanted to put into doing all the things that I should be doing. I mean, so I find myself slacking a little bit sometimes. So I get it. Life is life. We all have life. Life brings different things, and sometimes you have time to do all the things you want to, and sometimes you don't. And don't beat yourself up over it. That's just the ebb and flow of life. And, you do the best you can do to keep things moving, and especially for those of you who work full time doing something else. And this is just, a hobby or a side gig or a whatever it is. Don't beat yourself up if you aren't having, the growth that you want, if life is too busy. It is what it is. So you do what you can do, and try really hard not to compare yourself with whatever anyone else is doing, because it's not their life, it's your life, and it's what you're doing. So, all right. Let me think about, I'm going live tomorrow, because it's my regularly scheduled go live in person instead of on the treadmill. What is a good topic that you guys would like to talk about that we can do, where I'm on the screen, in front of the screen, instead of on the treadmill? Because I can do things and show you things, that I can't normally do when I'm walking. So, what do people need help with that I can show? What are some things that your would be helpful for you? Give me some ideas, because I'm kind of not sure what my plan is for tomorrow. I can always share people's profiles and give you feedback. I can do stuff like that. But I think it's helpful to navigate, to maybe show people things in the app that will help them, oh, I didn't even know you could do that kind of stuff. I like to kind of discover things like that with you and help people maybe be able to use the app smarter, because sometimes the workarounds that you're using, you didn't realize there were other things you could do. So let me give you a for example. Maybe I can show you how to do this. Anyone that sells items that are new with tag or in box or in package that have a UPC code on them. I think this is available on both iOS and Android, but at least on Apple, you can now scan the UPC code and load a product, and it pretty much does most of the listing for you. It's awesome. So that's one we could explore. So SoCal Gal, priority mail question. Does the label on flat rate have to say flat rate? Well, it always has said flat rate. So if you're mailing priority flat rate, the box that you're using, you select the box, either padded, flat rate small, flat rate medium, top load, flat rate medium, side load, or flat rate large. And then the label needs to match the box that you picked. So it will say medium flat rate or large flat rate. So it always has been that way. So if it's just saying priority, then you didn't select flat rate or you didn't have flat rate turned on. And so it did priority, which is different than flat rate in the sense that the box that you use can either be one of the Postal Service boxes that don't say flat rate but are priority, or it can be your own packaging. So yeah, make sure you're doing that correctly. Hey, WMB Mom, how are you today? Good deal lovers here. Patty is here, or Pat Gisbert is here. Takes Two Quilting, welcome in. What's going on with everyone today? Hope you're having a good day. And we're talking about the slower time on Whatnot, on in general online, and talking about strategies. What can you do during the slower time? And for some people, for some categories, it really isn't a slower time. It just depends on what you sell and how you strategize what you sell and all of that stuff. And there's always other factors. So sorry, it's confusing. So my 1 to 5 pound goes priority. Used to be those had to go in poly mailer. Now Whatnot says can use any of the USPS packaging. Oh, well, Whatnot, who on Whatnot is saying you can use any of their packaging? So it has to be, if you use flat rate, it has to be a flat rate label. End of discussion. So you have to use flat rate with flat rate. Priority, regular priority that is not flat rate can go in either the postal boxes that are not marked flat rate, that are marked priority, or your own packaging. So you just need to make sure if you're using flat rate that you're using a flat rate label. Okay, it has to match the box. If it just says priority but not flat rate, it can go in anything. So yeah, make sure you know the difference. Yeah, go back and read it again, because a flat rate box has to have a flat rate label. So I'm not sure what you were reading that had that. Hey, we just got raided by Quilted Moose. Thank you for the raid. How the heck are you? Thank you so much for the raid. Everybody give Quilted Moose a follow. She's an awesome seller, sells fabric and craft items here on Whatnot. Let's see, I have Takes to Quilting says I have a lot of garment textiles, denim, wool, corduroy, heavy stuff. Any suggestions on how to be economical for buyers and me? I would still honestly, if you have, first of all, curate the show so people know exactly what you're selling. If you have enough, you could probably group like denim and corduroy and stuff like that together. If you have enough wool, do wool separately, because that's a whole different audience. And I would say still try to do flat rate because those are more expensive textiles and you're less likely to have someone buy so much that you can't still fit it in a flat rate box. But, if you do, just, hopefully you can just use one of your adjustments if they buy so much that you've got to use a bigger box and send it Ground Advantage. So, because I think it really does make a difference if you can offer reduced shipping. People are more likely to buy from sellers who have either, free if you can do it or reduced shipping. Um, it does make a difference. People will avoid going into shows that don't have that reduced shipping icon on their thing, especially in certain categories. I wouldn't say that's true for vintage sellers because people understand that, most vintage items, glass items, fragile items, you're not going to usually be able to send in flat rate. But, I still think if you can pull it off most of the time, and if you get to a level where you're selling enough and you do every once in a while have to pay someone's extra shipping cost, oh well, that's a good problem to have, where you're paying some of the shipping because you sold so much, it's going to offset it. So kind of have that mentality of, I know it's a little bit scary and there's that fine line of, how much am I selling? And if I sell a ton and pay a little shipping, it's okay. But if I don't sell a ton and I have to pay shipping, then it's going to eat too much into my profits. So it just depends, on, where you're at in that process of what your volume of sales are. But a lot of sellers will take that leap if they want to go big time and take a couple of shows where they have a little bit of a loss, or they're not losing money but they're not making as much because they're covering some of the shipping because they want to kind of leap to that next level of being able to sell a lot more because people are willing to come in and buy more because you have reduced shipping. So just figure out what's going to work for you because it really does make a big difference to start offering, reduced shipping if you can. And because we do that. And I mean, I'm not the biggest seller in fabric, but I sell a lot. If you look at how many items I've sold, and I think there's only been one or two times in my whole 3 years where I've had to pay extra out of pocket to ship somebody's stuff. And if it did happen, it was probably because I screwed up on something. So, if you do it right, then usually you're not going to end up having to pay. So long cuts, 3 or more yards, won't fit in a flat rate box. Let's see, how would you react as a buyer to reduce shipping capped at 15? So yeah, I mean, if you have to end up setting your shipping settings at 1 to 5 priority and 5 and over Ground Advantage, and then you offer 15 cap, I think that's fair. Just explain it because I agree. If you're selling 3-yard cuts of some bulky wool, you're right. Fold that up and it's not going to fit in a large flat rate box. But I will tell you that there are things you can do to make fabric fit it better, So take fabric and take a large flat rate box, tape it shut, turn it upside down, sit it on your table, and fold the fabric exactly to the dimensions of the box. Take a plastic bag that you can suck the air out of, and you can fit a lot more in a flat rate box. I also like using side load medium because you can fold it to the dimensions of the box, suck the air out, and you can fit a lot more. But again, for what you're selling, that probably won't work. So I agree. If you can do something like that where you still have it capped, kind of figure out what that would be and then cap it and then take the risk of having to, spend a little bit extra on their shipping. Maybe don't offer, very many discounts or other things and instead offer, a little bit of a reduction on the shipping. So have your pricing fair, but not reduced. And then give them a little bit of spiff on the back end with the shipping. Yeah. So, but yeah, you should always be sending fabric in some kind of plastic anyway. And you can find some pretty good deals on bags that are sturdy enough that you can. Um, I call it the boob squish. You're going to laugh. But I take, once I've got fabric bagged, on my table, I just lean over, squish the air out, tie it shut, and you're going to be able to fit it better in the box. So, yeah. But you can fit a lot. You would be amazed at how much you can fit in a large flat rate box if you, pile it on the box exactly to the dimensions and then squeeze the air out. Good deal lover. If I offer flat rate, but seller doesn't want to pay, what that what do you recommend? They wanted 2 items today that were £2 total. If I offer flat rate, but seller doesn't want to pay that, what do you recommend? Oh, so you're saying that the buyer didn't want to pay? I'm confused. So you had someone wanting to buy 2 items that were £2 total, and they didn't want to pay the $9.21? Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's $9.21 is a really good rate. I don't know where else they shop. If they're shopping on Amazon and paying for Amazon Prime, then, you're still paying for it. If you go shop on eBay, you usually pay, a certain rate per, and it's not usually, it's about the same difference, especially if it's a £2 item. So if, too bad, I guess, if they don't want to pay the shipping, um, okay, fine, I'll add $9.21 to the price of the item, and put free shipping. Does that make you feel better? I mean, it's not free to you to send it if you do it that way, but maybe that's the mentality some people have is, the somebody's got to pay for the shipping. So whether it's built into the price of your item or you actually offer free, and then you offer free shipping, or they pay the shipping and, because $9.21 is actually a very good rate. Compare it to retail rates at the post office, and it's like less than half. So, yeah, I don't know, what they're thinking. There are some bigger sellers who do offer, lower reduced shipping and free shipping, but trust me, it's built into the price of what they sell, and they sell at a high enough volume that they're offsetting it by how much they sell. So there's no such thing as totally free shipping, and if you get to where, don't let people bully you into thinking that, you're not fair, because there's always bullies who are like complain about everything. Oh well, move on. So they probably want to reduce shipping since they had reached 5 pounds, lots of people charge like $4 first item and 2 for next. Yeah. So if you had your shipping settings set for, it just depends on what you put in for the weight. So be careful using that weight that is 4 to 6 pounds. And I don't even know why Whatnot put that in as a range. I'm going to bring that up actually. Because you should be able to put, since they have their division at 5 pounds, why do we have a weight range of 4 to 6? Because it's not going to be able to figure out, it's always going to put it at 6 because there is no, because it always puts it at the higher weight, right? So don't use 4 to 6, use a custom shipping profile that's 4 to 5, and then it won't bump them to the next level. So if you had 2 items that were 2 to 3 pounds range, it's trying to do it at 6 because it always takes the higher weight. Does that make sense? So maybe do custom shipping profiles that are more exact to the weight instead of using the ranges if you're not able to do flat rate, because then it will calculate it at the 921 instead of starting to charge them additional money for over 5 pounds if you have to use your settings that way. Look in my auction tab at this document, choosing basic shipping settings, the one I just pinned. It's a guide for new sellers to figure out how to decide what basic shipping settings you should be using when you're new that will help avoid, you getting charged too much for shipping or your customers being ticked off because they're getting charged too much for shipping. Because it really does depend on what you sell. There are sellers on here who just all day long, all they sell are Pokemon cards. That's probably one of the easiest things to ship in the world is a, handful of Pokemon cards, right? And if you're selling them in singles, you're just putting them in a little envelope or a little mailer. The rest of us who are trying to sell stuff that's a lot bulkier, it gets more complicated. So make sure that how you have your shipping settings set makes sense for what you sell. And sometimes you have to curate your show. One show you sell little things that are easy to ship, another show you sell the bigger things that are more difficult to ship, and you have a whole different shipping setting set for that show. Everybody knows, right, that you can have a different shipping setting for every show. You can go into that show specifically and edit the show and go down to the shipping settings and change them to what makes sense for that show. Make sure you're doing that if you have a show that's something completely different in a different way that you do it. Make sure you go in and change the shipping in that show. Because if otherwise it defaults to whatever you have set up on your main profile shipping. And if that's not going to work for a show that you're having, make sure you go change it in the specific show. So, yeah. Hey, welcome in. Hey, CG Boomerang. How are you today? CG Boomerang does the best of Whatnot. What are they called? Shows. And she does lots of raid trains. So if you're looking for raid train opportunities, make sure you check out CG Boomerang. And she has a website where you can go and get signed up for different raid trains. If you're selling media like books or movies, there are some slightly different shipping prices too. Yes. But Lone Pine, that's one of the funny things too, because at a certain point, if they buy a ton of books or movies, then depending on what the weight is, it sometimes ends up being cheaper for them to just be able to put them in a flat rate box. So, keep that in mind too when you're selling media. the media rate at a certain point gets more expensive than flat rate if they buy a lot. So just depends. But here's the other thing too. You can always toggle on or off flat rate on the back end. So no matter how you have your shipping settings set on the back end, when you go to ship, if what they bought doesn't fit within what you were trying to do initially, toggle flat rate on, toggle flat rate off, change how you ship it. And as long as you're within the, still within the same weight category and you didn't screw up on your weights, it's not going to charge you anything to change from one to the other. It just depends on what's going to fit best. So let's say that everything they bought still weighs under 5 pounds and you had flat rate turned on. You can turn it off and use the larger mailer still under 5 pounds, and there's not gonna be any additional charge. Does that make sense? So just be smart about how you do your shipping settings to make sure it's gonna work for your show. And then on the back end, you can switch things around a little bit. So Lone Pine says, I set my shipping to 7 to 11 ounces so that if people buy more than 2 items, I can switch it to flat rate. Yeah, there you go. Because 11 plus 11 is going to be over the 1 pound mark. And, but if it's 7 to 11, it's still giving you enough weight to ship it ground. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. So yeah, if it fits in a flat rate, if it's too big for a flat rate, I leave it as medium mail. That way it's still cheaper. Yes, perfect. See, you've got that figured out. Takes Two Quilting, promote tools. I read the words that say what the paid promote features do, but can you explain what potential buyers see when a promotion is active? So buyers will see on the For You page, if a show has been promoted, it shows on the For You page that it's a promoted show. And if someone comes in from the For You page into your show, it says something like brought in from promotion or something like that. But really, it's not that visible. Other than that, if they boost the show, that's different. If you have people in your show who add money and boost your show, like it reaches that $25 threshold and they actually boost your show, it will put under their name in chat that they are a booster, that they boosted your show. Yeah, it says yeah, that's what it says, Mary. It says they came in via promote. So it shows that they came in through your promoted For You listing. Now, I'm thinking, okay, well, if it's showing that, well, I think it only shows that for people who didn't already bookmark your show and have, just came because they already had it bookmarked. So these are people that found it by seeing that it was promoted, because when you promote a show, it puts your show to the top of the feed in search in that category. So that's why. Yeah. Oh, by the way, the other day in my show, people were talking about how some people had gotten charged to promote the show when they hadn't actually gone in and paid to promote. That was a glitch that unfortunately happened. And if you were one of those people or know someone who had that happen to them, they are aware of it and are reimbursing everybody. So make sure you check emails and check your ledger because they did go through and find everyone that was affected, or they should have. So if you didn't get reimbursed or you know someone, then make sure you check on that. So Thrifty Angel said, happened to me, Whatnot did refund me for the glitch. Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. So everybody that was was affected by that should have gotten reimbursed in full. If you didn't, make sure you reach out, give them the date of the show them the entry on your ledger, and you should be able to get reimbursed. I think they automatically went through and figured it out and got everyone fixed. So, yeah. Unfortunate little glitch there that they were very highly embarrassed about. So, yeah. Um, did that answer that about the promote thing, what they see? All right. And I have had questions. Oh, Mary says, I keep asking them and they told me it would be a few days, 5 days, you still have nothing. Okay, so I specifically gave them your name, Mary. So if you don't see it soon, let me know and I'll reach out again. But definitely send a request, to say, hey, by the way, I was told I would get reimbursed for this. But let me know, message me personally and tell me in a few days if you haven't seen it yet. But you need to look at your ledger to check to see if they reimbursed you. So, because they did say they were emailing people to let them know, and then they were reimbursing. So, all right. Talking about the promote, I've had people asking, is it worth it to promote? And my response is always, it depends on the category you sell in, and it depends on it. Honestly, you kind of have to try it to decide, and then look at the analytics to decide if it was worth it. And I know that's not the greatest answer because you have to spend a little bit of money, but I think that's true for almost anything, but be very strategic about when, if you decide you want to try it, be strategic about when you try it, and then really focus on looking at the analytics and looking at your show to see if you feel like it was worth it. Because if you sell in a category where there's a ton of sellers live in that category at any given time, it's probably more worth it than if you sell in a category where there's not a ton. And what do I mean by a ton? Well, it depends on the category, because if you go into like women's contemporary, there's probably hundreds of sellers live. If you go into plants, there's probably not hundreds of sellers live. You know what I'm saying? So if you're in a category that's more niche and there's only a few sellers, I can't see promote money really doing a whole lot for you, because you're in a more niche category, although it does supposedly put you on the forefront for other categories as well to come in. But I just think you have to decide, you know, do I really want to bring in people who know nothing about what I'm selling? Are they even going to convert to a buyer? So you just have to really focus on whether or not it will work for you, depending on what you sell, and if there's enough reason to need to spend money to be seen. Does that make sense? Yeah. For fabric, the people that came in from their promotion were too random. Only one purchased any fabric. So out of maybe 100, one new fabric. Exactly. So if you sell something that most people would really have to be searching for to want to buy, because they buy fabric, fabric is not something that everybody buys. It's not a mainstream item. It's not like shoes or clothing where everybody buys shoes and clothes. not everybody buys fabric. So think about what you sell and if it makes sense to promote. Um, you know, I, you know, just really think it through before you start spending a lot of money. Yeah, because I agree with Mary. It's, it's kind of more random. Yeah, that meant that you were charged 137 for a single $8 purchase. Yeah, and so that makes 0 cents, right? Now hers was part of the glitch. She didn't do it on her own, and but it's interesting to see the results because of that, right? And so for her, I agree. In fabric, it probably makes 0 cents to spend a lot of money promoting when it's an item that most people don't buy regularly. We have our own niche, our own group. We have our buyers and they come into that category. And it really would be the same for some other categories, like, for example, Pokemon cards. Not everybody buys Pokemon cards. I don't buy Pokemon cards. So if someone's paying to promote in that category, and you're bringing in a bunch of people from other categories that don't buy Pokemon cards, is it really going to bring in a lot of new buyers? Probably not. So if you have a very niche thing that you sell, promoting probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you're in, say, women's contemporary, now that could make a huge difference, right? Yeah, their email said to enjoy the benefits of the promotion on them. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, there wasn't much benefit, right? Yeah, so really think about um, paying to promote. It has to make sense. It has to make sense. So, and women's contemporary, it probably makes, well, I know it makes a difference. I have a friend who sells in women's contemporary, and she promotes every show. And it works for her and it makes sense because she's in a highly competitive category that can bring in, buyers because everybody buys clothing, everybody buys accessories, and she can bring in some new people that maybe didn't know about her before. So yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Takes Two. I would not promote it. What I would do though is really advertise ahead what you're going to sell in that show and promote it on social media and have a really good thumbnail and a really good title so people who are looking for that type of fabric will come to your shows. I have people all the time asking for apparel fabric. I don't sell apparel fabric very often, but I know people are looking. So definitely make sure you advertise far in advance, what you're selling so that people who are looking for those types of things have your shows bookmarked. And maybe explore the time of day that you have it. I know that nighttime is more competitive for fabric, but if you're selling something that is more narrowed down, like wool or something, still have it at the more competitive time to capture the bigger audience, because people who want that specific type, the availability is better during those hours where people are off work. So you're not really competing against the general fabric sellers who mostly sell quilting cottons, because you're doing something more specific, and you'll have a smaller audience, but you'll have an audience that wants to buy, if that makes sense. So, because you promoted what you're going to sell, you have a thumbnail and a title that tell everybody I'm selling wool or whatever. And make sure you go out on social media and really pump it up and advertise it and try to bring in some people for that show. But yeah, promoting wool to the general whatnot audience probably not going to be effective for you because they might be like, oh, what's this? I'm curious. And then they come in and you're selling fabric and they're like, oh, I don't sew. Why would I want this? So it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Yeah. See, you usually avoid prime time, but when you have a niche show, when you're selling something specific, prime time is still your best time because you're not really competing against other people selling just the general fabric. You're selling something specific. Top shelf. Hello. Let's see. I sell fragrance body oils and looking for followers and advice. So, welcome to Whatnot. And let me just give you a way to get a whole bunch of really good tips really fast. So, if you go into my shop, so just tap the store button, the shop button on your screen. See right there, it's showing some markers. Tap that and then make sure your screen is on the auction tab. And then all of those 9 items in my auction are all my tips and trick sheets. And you can just go through all those items and screenshot all the tips and tricks. And so I've got the one that I've got pinned right now is how to choose your shipping settings based on what you sell. And I've got one in there about attracting and keeping buyers. I've got one in there about envelope shipping guide, setting goals, selling formats and pricing, shaking the nerves to go live, and the shipping 101. And then there's also one about my top 10 tips. I just pinned that one. That one's probably the most like very basic things that you should be doing every day to be successful and whatnot, to get off on the right foot and get going. You are so welcome. So, yeah, just go through all 9 items and get all the screenshots of all those different things and read through them. And then also take a screenshot of my show notes because that gives you those 4-starred bullets. Those are your, where do I go for help? You go to help.whatnot.com. And you also, as a new seller, should be going through the Seller Academy and watching all the tutorials and videos and taking all the little courses in there to make sure you get off to the right start on just the basics of how to use Whatnot, how to navigate the app, how to sell, how to set things up. Okay. So those are all the basics. Top 10 tips. When you look at that one that I have pinned, it's this sheet. And I jokingly refer to it as my 10 commandments of how to what not to do, what to do. And it was the stuff that people just kept asking. What about this? What about that? What about this? So I'm like, I need a list. So I made it my top 10 tips. It's not very detailed. It's just a list of these are all the things you need to be doing. And then you need to go look up the specifics about it to, help you figure out all those things. But my number one tip on that list is schedule shows. Why is that my number one tip? That seems so ridiculous. Schedule shows, no duh. Well, you would be amazed at how many people who are new don't realize that you need to have lots of shows scheduled. Because if you think, okay, I'm scheduling a show and then I go live and then I don't schedule another show till I go live again, wrong. You need to have lots of shows scheduled so that people can find you. That's how they find you, is by shows. And you gather bookmarks. And if you go live and you have a show and you're telling people come back again, if you don't have more shows scheduled for them to bookmark, what's the chances they're going to find you again? Even though they followed you, there's very little chance they'll find you again because it just has to be the magical, like, okay, I happened to go live And these, 500 people that maybe saw a previous show, two of them might happen to be on the app at the same time. No, you need bookmarks so people are notified and see the ones that they saved and are able to then come back because they bookmarked your show. So when you're new, that's huge. Once you have a consistent following and a consistent schedule, a little less important for your regulars, but still important for attracting new buyers. You've got to have shows scheduled. That's my number one tip. Schedule shows. And number two is obviously go live. Go live, start going live, and keep going live as much as you possibly can. You know, and going live and how much you go live depends on what works for you and what your goals are. If your goal is just to go live and see how it works, well, dang it, that's great. Go live. If your goal is I want to be a premier shop within 6 months, then you need to be going live probably every day and staying on for a couple hours. It just depends on what your goal is. So that's my number 2 tip. Number 3 tip is list items. Get a lot of items listed in your shop, in your auctions, in your buy it now, and list a few low cost items for people to buy to support you as a new seller. I need to change that. I just realized it says for people to gift. They took that away. Boo hoo. I'm still very sad about that. But yeah, you need to have items listed because if you don't, it's like walking into a store and the shelves are empty. People assume that you're out of business, closed down. So if people come to your lives or go into your profile and you have nothing listed, you're like an empty store and no one's going to stick around. So get things listed, have things for people to see so that they know what you sell. Once you become very established and have a huge following, a little less important, but I still think it's important for getting new buyers because they don't know that you're popular and amazing and wonderful. And if you have nothing listed, why would they stick around? So you need to have items listed. So Mary says, I'm consistent with every Thursday now and is almost equal. 50% is regular, 50 new. Yeah, exactly. And if you don't have a regular schedule, you don't have shows scheduled for them to bookmark, and you don't have listings, you may get some of your regulars, but you're not going to get new. So you got to have, always have things listed, always have shows scheduled, and you want new customers because that's how, because people buy too much and disappear off the app for 2 months because they feel bad that they bought so much. And then who's going to replace that regular customer? You need new customers constantly. Okay. Treywoo has future shows listed. I know, I saw. Awesome. So Treywoo, remind me when your first show. Did you do it already? Did I miss it? It's been a crazy week. Today, 7 p.m. That's your first show, right? I should be able to pop in. I've got it bookmarked. We're having a show earlier, but we'll be done by then. And I'm watching my grandbaby. So depending on her cooperation, should be able to at least pop in. So Treywoo's first show today, 7 p.m. my time. Not sure what time it is for everybody else. So awesome. Definitely have it bookmarked. And yes, I saw that on your profile, you've got shows bookmarked out. So that's awesome. And everybody can definitely see what you're selling. That's important. And you've got at least a few items listed. So that's good. So very cool. All right. top shelf, doing a few communities first for networking. Yeah, and that's fine. Definitely always be networking, going into other people's shows, be a buyer a little bit, be a seller, and start, just really start networking. 20 items listed right now. We'll list more today. Perfect. Yeah. You need to get stuff in your store. Yeah, in the buy it now. I tell people if you don't have a buy it now, you're missing out. So we were talking about, people coming into your shows that may not necessarily like or buy what you're selling in your auction, but if they like you and they want to support you, a way that they can do that is by buying something out of your buy it now. So always have items in there that are just more general merchandise appealing to the mass, things that people can buy. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of the items in my buy it now right now is car air fresheners for cheap. And and it ships in an envelope. So the shipping is 73 cents. Well, 69 cents charged to the customer, right? So these little car air fresheners, find some little things like that people can just buy for a buck or two to support you. Stickers. I found those. I thought those were brilliant because who doesn't need, a car air freshener? We all do. Our cars get stinky. And if you want to support a seller and whatnot, why not buy it here then instead of, at the gas station when you're going to forget to buy it anyway? So, put stuff like that, little things that people can buy for inexpensive that are cheaper shipping, and you'll get sales. I get buy it now sales in every show, you guys. And you need to learn how to use flash sales. Flash sales are awesome. So if you don't know, that's something we could talk about tomorrow. I'm still trying to figure out my topic for tomorrow. What is, something we could do a deeper dig into that you guys would find helpful? Flash sales, what's something that would be helpful to you guys? How to list things, going into the listings and showing all the different ways you can list items. What would be helpful? Because I have a show tomorrow morning where I'm not walking on the treadmill. And so I like to do things where I can show you things on the screen. So give me some ideas of what would be most helpful. I mean, I'll do some stuff anyway, but it's always nice if someone's like, I really need this. I was talking earlier about being able to scan the UPC codes on items. If you sell items that are new, you can scan the UPC and it pre-lists the whole item for you. It's amazing. So you get like pictures and descriptions. It fills in the title, depending on what's available out there on the database for UPC. But it fills in the title, usually the description, and it will give you a the what is that photo called that's like the base photo for items. It'll usually give you that too. So Deals by Victoria, just bookmarked my show for tomorrow. Yeah, you're welcome. You are welcome. Yeah, and really just I go live. I'm on my treadmill. It's kind of selfish, but I was like, if I'm on here chatting with you guys, I'm not buying stuff. And instead I'm giving out information to help people. So it's a win-win. And I just provide those documents because a lot of people were coming in and asking the same things over and over and over. And I'm like, they need something to just be able to screenshot and have that information. And most of the information I have, you can find out there on whatnot and help, but it's easy to not but some people don't always know the words to type in. Let's see, deals. I have no items listed in my store, but after what you just said and why we need them, I will be putting a few up today before my show. Yes, definitely do. Make sure you know how to list an item and whether it's going to be in the auction or in the buy it now. And then the settings, if you put in something as a buy it now item, are different than the settings for auction items, and you have a lot more flexibility, including variations. You can put variations on buy it now items now. So if you have something that you have multiple colors or multiple sizes, you instead of having to create separate listings, you can have, this t-shirt and they can buy it in red, blue, or green. So you can also do variations. So that's another thing I can show you guys tomorrow. Yep. So it just makes it easier because you can do one listing instead of three. Because you used to have to do t-shirt green, t-shirt red, t-shirt blue, three separate listings. Now it can be one listing. They get to pick size or color. Now you don't get to have multiple variations. It is just one right now, but that's a huge improvement. So yeah, perfect. And a lot of times, items that you maybe previously always sold in auction, sometimes it's a better strategy to have those in your buy it now. Price them up and fair, but put them in your buy it now and do flash sales or run as auction out of buy it now. And it's always listed instead of having to be limited to when you do an auction. So that's another strategy to, have it more visible and more available. Because auction items are restricted to when you run them and when you have them in your auction. Whereas buy it now items, they can see and buy when they want. Yes, you can still run as auction from buy it now. So if you have something listed in your buy it now, just run it as an auction occasionally or run it as a flash sale. Because buy it now gives you a lot more flexibility with how you can run that item or how you can show that item. So lots of flexibility there. And a lot of sellers have gotten to a model more where their higher price, nicer items are actually in the buy it now. Because then people aren't threatened by paying, for that item, what you've got it listed at if you have it at a fair price, but they like it because they're like, I don't have to bid against other people. If I want to buy this, I can just buy it right now. So think about that too. When you put items in, decide, maybe this would be a better item for buy it now. Because a lot of times a higher price, if you're running an auction, having to start it at a higher price sometimes turns people off. But if they're just shopping and they want something and they know they aren't going to have to bid against other buyers and it's just in your buy it now, heck yeah, they'll just buy it. Does that make sense? So sometimes just put your nicer, higher priced items in the buy it now instead of running them at auction, because then you don't have to run the risk of, starting it lower and it doesn't get bid up. Can you copy items from your auction over to your buy it now, or do you have to totally relist it? No, you just change it from. So if you have an item in your auction and you want it to be in the buy it now, you just change the listing to a buy it now listing. So, and you can also go into inventory on your web version, so on your PC or your laptop, and there is an option to duplicate. And then you can, so like if you have some you want in buy it now and some in auction, just make sure you're very clear about what you have in inventory. So you don't have it listed both places, sell it in the buy it now, and then run it in the auction and you don't even have it in stock. Does that make sense? So make sure it's, there's a difference or you have enough if you are trying to do that with the same item. So just be careful with your inventory, because if you put something and buy it now and then you don't realize someone bought it and then you run it in the auction under a different listing and it sells, and then you're like, go to ship and you're like, oh my gosh, I oversold this. So be careful about that. Just do that. Just be careful. Yeah. So if you have it in both places, just make sure you have multiples of that, because otherwise you're running the risk of, selling something that you don't have. Ask me how I know. it When we first started selling on Whatnot, the inventory was not as tight, meaning you could have a listing in your buy it now and not realize you had it in there, and then because you couldn't actually change listings back and forth. And so I had that happen a couple of times early on, where I had it in the buy it now and someone bought it. I didn't realize they bought it. And then I ran it in auction and sold it and went to ship and went, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was in my buy it now and someone bought it. So then I had to cancel, someone's order, and it was embarrassing. So yeah, don't do that. All right. So yeah, bookmark my show tomorrow, and we can go on screen and show you guys a bunch of different things about listings, about flash sales, about how to duplicate, the different settings and how to use them, stuff like that. If a listing is in both buy it now and auction and it's sold in an auction, Whatnot automatically takes it off if it's the same listing, yes. So if you have it in your buy it now and then you run it as an auction, it's automatically going to take that off your inventory, right? But she's talking about having two separate listings, one in buy it now and one in auction. And I was just being cautionary, saying make sure if you have two separate listings that you make sure you have two of or multiple of. Yeah. Yeah. So if she had two sets, so let's say that you had, a t-shirt and you have 5 of them and you put, one in your auction to run, and then you have 4 available in the buy it now. Just make sure you know your inventory, and so that when you have the separate listings, you thought one listing could be in both. No. So it's either set for auction or for buy it now. If you have it in the buy it now, you can run it as an auction, but that listing is physically located in the buy it now. It just gives you the option to run it as an auction. You can always go into your buy it now and run things as auction items, even though it wasn't listed in the auction tab. Yeah. Yeah. So just make sure you keep track. If you want to use that strategy, make sure your inventory is set so that you don't oversell something. When are they going to give us categories in our buy it now is what I want to know. Yeah, they need to work on that. That's definitely been requested. I think the way that the inventory works right now and the way the sort works right now, I mean, you can go into someone's buy it now and sort by name, but yeah, we need categories. I don't know when that's coming, but that definitely has been requested multiple times. So, one day at a time. Here's what I will say. Oh, you have movies, 800 movies listed. Yeah, that makes it hard to find, because you want to be able to say, horror versus action versus romance or whatever, and have people be able to So what I would do, so Lone Pine, what do you do right now? Because if I were you, I would put, you know, that as the very first word on every movie. So, like, if it's a romance movie, put romance as the first word, and then you can tell people type romance and it will bring up all the romance movies. See what I'm saying? That might be a lot of work to go back and do that. So, yeah. All right, everybody give Top Shelf sent stuff a follow. One of the things you guys should be doing is following each other and making sure you bookmark each other's show. So Top Shelf sent stuff is Julian, and Julian has no shows scheduled yet. So Julian, we can follow you, but try and get a show scheduled in your profile so that you can start gathering bookmarks. Even if you schedule it like a month out, if you still aren't sure when you're going to have it, just schedule it so we can start giving you bookmarks. Yeah. So I got you followed, Top Shelf, but get some shows scheduled so that people have something to bookmark. Let's see, media to the auction tab and laser items to the buy it now. Currently, I have all my items listed by what they are to begin with, like DVD, title, or laser made item. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that makes sense because some people are, specifically want Blu ray or whatever. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see. I scheduled my first show, but was hospital. Oh, I'm sorry, the West Coast. I hope you're feeling better. And that's the thing about scheduling shows. Get shows on your schedule, people, because you can always move it. Never cancel a show, just go in and move it out. So if something comes up, horrible, like having to be in the hospital, you just go on your app and move it out, but you've still got it scheduled and you don't lose those bookmarks. So never cancel a show, always, just move it out. You are so welcome, Top Shelf. Yeah, my YouTube channel is Draz on Whatnot. It's in the show notes. And thank you, Lucky Bens, for subscribing. And if you miss one of my shows, and we talked about something you want to rewatch, just go to YouTube and subscribe, and you can rewatch my shows on the lives. So go to my channel and go to the lives, and you'll find, all the shows, my past shows. So. All right. You are so welcome. I need to get going here, so I'm going to go find someone to raid. And make sure you have tomorrow's show bookmarked. And we'll go in depth, and I won't be on the treadmill for tomorrow's show. And we can do some, digging into listings and promoting and flash sales and all the different things like that. So come prepared with some of the things that you really want help with. And, we can do some deep diving, and we can also share profiles, and I can give you feedback on your profiles, stuff like that. All right, let's see. We're going to raid into a raid train that is a new seller raid train. So you'll be able to look and find out who the organizer is if you want to try to get into raid trains. So they're currently on Mad Mama's Bargains. So that's where we're gonna go. So let me get this set up. We're gonna go into Mad Mama's Bargains. Here we go. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and hope to see you tomorrow.